Morning, good morning. This is Dr. Herbert Harris, and this is Success Mentorship Call number 108. Welcome to our guests and those who've never been on our program before. Thank you so much for joining us. As you know, much of what we cover is based on our book, The 12 Universal Laws of Success, which is available on Amazon and on our website, www.12, that's the number 12, uls.com. On the broadcast today, we are greatly appreciated if you could share it with your friends and family, and I guarantee you that we're going to have a good time. Our topic for today is Success Mentorship Call number 108. And the topic is handling disappointment. And this topic is very apropos because this period that we're living in right now, this crisis period, many of us are coming to that point where we want to move on to the next level, to survive and thrive, to pick up the pieces and to go forward. And so how do we do that? And one of the tools for going forward is to learn how to master how to handle disappointment, because as we move along, we will surely experience disappointment. I love to open with a quote, and our quote for today is one of those quotes that we don't know who said it, okay, but it's a powerful thought. And the quote says, "Disappointments are God's way of saying, I have something better. Be patient, live life, have faith." Let me say that again. Disappointments are just God's way of saying, I've got something better. Be patient, live life, have faith. So in that context, disappointment is a negative emotion. The technical definition is that disappointment is sadness or displeasure caused by non-fulfillment of one's hopes or expectations. In other words, whenever you set out to do something and you don't accomplish what you set out to do. Disappointment is necessary, though. It is a very powerful part of our development, of our growth. And I want to give you sort of put that in context. When we look at a diamond and a piece of coal, chemically, they are pretty much the same. And so the question is, how is a diamond different from a piece of coal? A diamond becomes a diamond from coal because of pressure. Intense pressure literally forces a piece of coal, that carbon atom, to become a diamond. And so disappointment is really a way of forcing us to become more powerful, forcing us to become a diamond, that within each and every one of us, there's a diamond inside. And when we experience disappointment, it makes us want to get better. It makes us want to do more. And as a result, disappointment can then become a stimulant for something positive. So let's look at disappointment as a way to get our attention for us to do better. I think that's a good way, a way to get our attention for us to do better. I like to look at 4 aspects of disappointment. First, disappointment in yourself. Second, disappointment in failing to live up to, well, let's just say disappointment that you have failed to live up to someone's expectation. And then disappointment where you really guide your life by somebody else's expectation. And then disappointment in the world mind. So let's look first at disappointment in yourself. When you experience disappointment in yourself, number one, be happy, because when you experience disappointment in yourself, you're really saying, I had something that I set out to do. If a person does not have goals or objectives, then they'll never be disappointed. I listen a lot at the young people and say, well, what are you doing? I'm chilling. I don't think anybody ever fails at chilling. I don't think they're ever disappointed at chilling because it does not take you to any specific place. So the fact that you're feeling disappointment is okay because it's saying that you set out to do something and it just didn't work based on your expectations. Sometimes we experience disappointment inside because we feel that we really didn't do our best. We got a certain result, but we did not get the result we desired. And the reason was because we did not do our best. When we experience that disappointment in ourselves, we have to be very careful not to beat up on ourselves about it, not to blame ourselves about it. And look at this disappointment as just a learning experience to help us get better. Sometimes we also experience disappointment for what happens to someone else. Now, this is a tricky one, folks. As parents, sometimes we're disappointed in ourselves for what our children do. And, it may be because we're trying to live our lives to our children. But it's very easy as a parent to blame yourself when your child does something unexpected. Like, oh, maybe I could have been a better parent. Maybe I could have put in more time. But, the one thing we cannot do, we cannot change the past. We can only write the future. And so when we have this experience where we're disappointed in someone else had an experience and we feel that we could have changed it, we could have helped it, it's very important to realize that people are people. Everybody's an individual. Once the bird kicks the little bird out of the nest, he doesn't run around trying to figure out where he's going. He doesn't take any responsibility for that bird's life. So as a parent, to recognize that we did all we could based on where we were at the time. We did the best we could with what we had to do it with. Sometimes in this experience, this is an opportunity to let go. It is time to just let go. And as they say, let go and let God, let the person be there on their own. Then we have that disappointment in what we permit ourselves to be impacted by. In other words, disappointment based on somebody else's expectations for us. Now, this is a tough one, folks, because very often when we live our lives based on somebody else's expectation, then we can only fly as high as they permit us. We can fall as low as we permit ourselves to fall based on an outside reference of somebody else's expectations. We cannot live our lives through other people's expectations. But this type of disappointment is very critical because when we live our lives based on someone else's expectations, in many instances, the outcome is really a result of the state of mind of the person who's you're trying to live for. When we find ourselves in this situation, say we're living up to somebody else's expectations, many times we're like, you just want to not be blamed. You just want to not be harmed. And so you can spend your life living based on somebody else's expectation where your only goal is to prevent yourself from being harmed by their vibration or their situations. The fourth is disappointment in the world. We don't have necessarily control over the world, but we do have the ability to formulate our response to these external circumstances. So right now we may be living through a pandemic, but we have the ability now to formulate an attitude to say, well, this is what the world has created. How can I use this time with myself to better myself? How can I use this time to reevaluate my position so that I can know better how to go forward? This disappointment in the world is something that is very important because it lets us know our perspective. I love the serenity prayer. And it says this. It says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so when we're dealing with the world mind and the world experience, and we have disappointment based on the world mind, we can take heart and say, hey, these are things I can't control, but I can control my attitude toward it. And I can always figure out a way to convert lemons into lemonade. So when we look at this idea of disappointment, what are some of the notes? Some little, you might say, little nuggets. Of all the forms of disappointment, the one that I think impacts many of us most is the idea of that failure to meet our own expectations for someone else. I'll say that again. Disappointment is our failure to meet our own expectations for someone else. For example, with our children. Our disappointment in meeting our own expectations for our children based on what the children do. When we see this often, this is a sign that it's time to let go. That we shouldn't be trying to live our lives through them, through someone else, through our children, through our friends, through our whenever we try to live our lives through someone else, we set ourselves up for disappointment. And so just looking at this, disappointment in ourselves, disappointment in others, disappointment in the world. So if disappointment is a key, as a negative emotion, and it is, then what do we do to handle disappointment? How do we use disappointment to improve ourselves? How do we convert a negative emotion to a positive experience? And so this is really the process of creating the diamond within you. First step, don't be overwhelmed. When situations arise where we experience disappointment, don't respond immediately. You see, since disappointment is a negative emotion, if we respond too quickly, we are responding to the raw energy, the vibration of the emotion without giving that emotion time to be interpreted through our own consciousness and through our own experience. It's almost like we're reacting to something before we had a chance to think about it. And so when you experience disappointment, just take a pause. Just take a deep breath. Just recognize that if you're experiencing disappointment, it's an affirmation that you're trying to do something. And so rather than beat yourself up, ask yourself, what is the lesson to be learned here? Maybe it's a new thought. We can start out our lives and proceed on a body of thought that is negative. And so we can literally set ourselves up for failure. Think about the thought of setting goals. We can set a goal that it's impossible to achieve. And as a result, when we don't achieve it, we can be disappointed that we didn't achieve it. And that disappointment can lead to discouragement. Discouragement can lead to paralysis. And paralysis can lead to failure. So we may have to retool our thoughts so that we have to create thoughts that are consistent with who we are and where we're going and our own capacity, our own ability based on where we are right now. Sometimes we have to change our emotions. We may have sometimes we have an inferiority complex. There are people who live their lives just waiting for the next negative thing to happen. There was a great commercial. There was a guy, a basketball player. You never see him anymore. I think his name was Latrell Sprewell. And he was a person who had such great potential, an excellent basketball player. But there was something about his mindset, his personal life, that success always eluded him. And there was a commercial, and a young girl is sitting there with her dad, and Spruill is there, and the dad, I think, is attempting to teach her to handle disappointment. And Spruill says, listen, success is only failure waiting to happen. Wow, think about that mindset, that emotion. Success is failure waiting to happen. So no matter what good comes to you, you're ready to see the negative side of it. I'm sure that all of us know somebody that can always see the negative side of anything. If you went out and walked on water, they would complain that you can't swim. Sometimes we have to make a change in our habits. You know, our habits, in the beginning, we create our habits, but eventually our habits create us. So maybe the habit of tardiness. And we have an experience of disappointment that says, hey, you need to take a checkup. You need to be on time. You need to plan your day better. You need to plan your life better so that you're not late all the time. Because there's always going to be that one time when you're late and it really costs you. It's like that dog sitting on the nail. He'll sit on that nail until it hurts badly enough. You'll exhibit a negative habit until you pay dearly enough. Sometimes you need a change in your relationships, your people around you. Often with young people, I tell them just be, everybody's not who they appear to be. Learn how to discern who people really are based on their actions. There's a beautiful thought. It says, people are always telling you who they are. It's just that many times we don't want to listen. We don't hear. So don't be overwhelmed. Step 2, recognize that you cannot live your life based on somebody else's expectations. Impossible. That no matter what you do, when you live your life based on somebody else's expectations, you'll never be good enough. You'll never do enough. When you live your life based on someone else's expectations, it's like having an anchor. You know, when you have a rowboat and you're out in the water, you drop the anchor so that the boat does not veer away too far from this particular area that you want to remain in. And so that anchor becomes a rock holding you in place. When you live your life according to other people's expectations, their expectations become an anchor holding you in place so that you cannot fly. Their expectations can become a hole into which you descend because they see you there and you accept it. You see, when we look at disappointment in other people's expectations, we have to reframe our thinking and say, you know what? I don't care about other people's expectations. I'm focused on my own expectations for myself. I do better in my own eyes. Maybe I didn't do it right this time, but when I know more, I can do better. When I know better, I can do better. Number 3, forgive yourself. When we don't live up to our own expectations and we experience disappointment, we can't beat up on ourselves. We have to look at disappointment really as a learning experience. We have to recognize that disappointment can lead to discouragement. Discouragement can lead to paralysis, and paralysis can lead to failure. And so when you don't come up to your own expectations, then you reframe that and say, well, hey, every day and every way, I'm getting better and better. When I know more, I can do more. When I understand more, I can succeed greater. So forgive yourself for all disappointments, all things that created disappointments in your past and even in your present experience, so that you're now free to learn. You see, as long as you hold on to that beating yourself up about something, it's like a closed fist. You can't accept the good things that can come to you. Number 4, to recognize that disappointment has a season. in the good book, it says that all things have a season. And so when we do things, when we have expectations for accomplishment and stuff happens, it can be that the thing that we were attempting to accomplish had a different season. And so us not achieving it had nothing to do with our own ability and our own process. It only had to do with the fact that this thing had a different season. So if you're a farmer and your family is hungry and you plant corn today, don't be disappointed when you don't have food for your family next week, because corn has a season of its own, has a cycle of its own. It takes 60 to 90 days to grow and mature. And so when things don't happen according to plan, look at them. And this is a part of that whole idea of being still and knowing. Look at them and say, you know what? Good idea, good plan. It was just not the season for that particular thing, though. So let me now be wiser. Let me see what the cycle is for this particular endeavor, and let me become congruent with that cycle. And so if I'm a farmer, let me plant, let me till the soil, let me protect it for 60 to 90 days, and then I will have a harvest. The key is to be patient and to try and try again in better and more creative ways. The fifth key to overcoming disappointment is to take small steps. You know, once we hit a rock, once we experience disappointment, there's that tendency to want to change everything. We want to create whatever we didn't do. Let's do this and do it all right now. The challenge is that life doesn't work like that. And so when you experience disappointment and you're taking those steps to rectify it, take small steps. Nothing is impossible, but at a particular level of our own consciousness, we may need a little bit of work with it. We may need to consult with somebody who's already been there. There's a proverb that says, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And so as you begin to master and handle disappointment, do it in small chunks so that you can reaffirm your faith in yourself and your own ability. And then finally, number 6, to treat disappointment as a learning experience. And we can go back to our quote that disappointment was, let me pull it up again. It says, disappointments are God's way of saying, I've got something better for you. Be patient, live life, have faith. Then when we look at disappointment as a learning experience, it's that process of creating a diamond from a piece of coal. It's a sign that the fact that you're experiencing disappointment is a sign that you are trying to do something, that you're on the move, that you're trying to accomplish, that you're trying to grow, that you're trying to be more, to do more, to have more. And so when we look at disappointment as a learning experience, then we can grow from the learning. So when we experience disappointment, we say, okay, what can I learn from this? Okay. How can I change my thoughts, my emotions, my habits, my associations so that I can get the results I desire? How can I change failure to success? You know, Winston Churchill said that success is moving from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm. I say that success is moving from disappointment to disappointment without losing your enthusiasm. Because each disappointment now is a life lesson to help you get better, help you get stronger. So let's review Success Mentorship class number 108, Handling Disappointment. Basically 3 solid areas of disappointment, 3 big areas. Disappointment in yourself, disappointment in others, disappointment in the world mind. And the keys to handling disappointment, the 6 steps to handling disappointment. Number 1, don't be overwhelmed. Take time before you respond. Number 2, to realize that you cannot live your life based on somebody else's expectations. Number 3, to forgive yourself, to stop blaming and beating yourself up. Forgive yourself knowing that it's a learning experience to help you grow and help you go. Number 4, to recognize that every endeavor has a season, and that when you want to overcome disappointment, become congruent with the season of the things that you're seeking. Number 5, to take small steps. That each step that you take strengthens you and helps you become more and more powerful, increases your ability to overcome, to make things happen. Each time you have a little success, it says to you, you can do it. It says that you have the power. And so take small steps that build your faith and your ability. And then finally, step 6, to realize that disappointment is a good thing. It's a negative experience that can have a positive outcome. The disappointment is a learning experience to help you do better, be more, achieve more. Disappointment is a process to help you go from being a piece of coal, an ordinary piece of coal, to becoming the diamond that you really are. When you can handle disappointment, then there's no challenge that you cannot meet. There's no obstacle that you cannot overcome. And there is no dream that you cannot realize, knowing that the best is yet to come. And so it is.